in this lesson, we're going to finish the wing. Alright, so let's go ahead and select our wing here, and we need to create the bottom of the wing. And the way that this needs to be created is I need to create a more flat shape for the wing, but I need it to follow along with the overall contour shape of the wing. So a way that I can do this is I can make a copy of this model by holding down Shift and dragging that down, and I've just cloned that, and I'm just going to make that a copy there, and we'll hit OK. Now the issue that we're going to have with this is that the way this is that this part will not render if seen from underneath. So what I need to do is I need to flip the normals. So a way that we can flip normals is by going to Editable Poly, and then we're going to go to Element Mode, and this will allow us to select all of the polygons in that object. And I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to go to Flip. So here you can see that we have the polygons flipped toward us. So now if I hit Render, you'll see that I can see the top portion of the wing. If I go underneath, I can see the bottom portion. Alright. So now that we have that, what do we do at this point? Well, we can go ahead and leave them curved like this, and it's pretty flat, so I think we'll be safe with leaving it this shape here. If you want to create a little bit more of a thickness down here toward the front, you can take this vertex here and you can pull that down if needed. Okay, so if you want to create that little bit of thickness, you can do so. Okay, but I think this should be pretty good. Now, why are we copying this geometry? Why don't we just create it new? Well, we need to make sure that we have the exact same contour shape, and it's also very helpful if we have the same amount of edges to bridge to and from. Now, an issue that we're having here is how do we bridge from this object to this one, because I'm not able to access the edges of the top wing or the top portion of the wing. Well, we need to make these objects the same, okay, part of the same object. So a way we can do that is using attach. Now before we can attach these objects, let's go ahead and get rid of our modifiers on each one of these. And then we're going to select the top or the bottom, it doesn't matter. And we're going to use the attach function. So click on attach and then select the bottom portion of the wing or vice versa. And now we can go to edge mode, and you can see that we can grab the edges along the top portion of the wing as well as the bottom. Alright, great. Now, one thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and start capping all of this together. So I can bridge this, or I could go to border mode and select the borders around both of these wings, and I could use bridge this way. And that will go ahead and bridge all of those together. So that's much easier than going through and picking. Okay, this is also an advantage of cloning the top portion of the wing for the bottom of the wing. Alright, a couple of things that you want to do really quickly is you want to check your normals just to make sure that everything is looking good. So we can see the bottom of our wing, we can see the inside portion, and then we can also see the top. So that's very good. Alright, so now what we need to do is we need to do a little bit of reshaping. A couple of things that kind of stick out to me are really the thickness on the ends of the wings and that sort of thing. Also the position of this portion of the wing here. I'm going to go to polygon mode. I'm going to select just these polygons here, and I'm going to rotate those, but I'm going to rotate those in the local axis. And I'm going to rotate those along the X direction. So that makes things a little bit easier. Okay, so we're going to make sure that that's pointing downward. Let's go to our front view just to kind of check the shape of this. And that's looking pretty good. Okay. Now, we're going to have to smooth this out. So to smooth it out, we're going to use that Turbo Smooth, and then we're going to have to harden some of the edges up and things like that. So I'm really happy with this overall shape so far. There are a couple of things that I want to make some adjustments to. First off, let's go to the top view, and I want to change the overall width of this front part of the wing here. So I'm just going to grab those vertices and just kind of pull those down here. Do the same thing here. I just kind of felt like that was a little bit too thick. Alright. Now I need to make some adjustments to the thickness right in here. I want that to taper down some, and I'm going to go to vertex mode, and I'm going to try to make this as thin as possible. But if I grab this down in the Z and I pull that straight down, that really changes the shape a little bit too much. I don't necessarily want to change the shape on this front end, but I want to change the taper here. So I'm going to constrain my movements of my vertices. And this can be done by scrolling down and going to the Edit Geometry rollout, and you'll see that we have constraints. We can constrain all of our sub-objects to a specific sub-object movement. So I'm constraining this vertex to the edge. So if I drag that down on the Z, you'll see that it's constraining that vertex movement along this edge here. This is a great way to make sure your topology stays nice and clean and you don't get any weird shadows or anything. So a very nice tool. Now sometimes whenever you're working with that and you forget about it and you start to move other objects and that sort of thing, let's say you try to move this out in the X and Y and it only follows along one edge, remember those constraints. So you want to turn that back to none when you're finished constraining those edges. Alright, very good. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and apply that Turbo Smooth, and let's just see what we have at this point. Alright, so let's take our iterations up to 2. Let's turn on Isoline Display, and everything is really smooth, and it really doesn't look all that great to me. I need some harder edges on these wings. Okay, so what are we going to do? Well, we're going to add segments to the base geometry. So let's go to Editable Poly, let's show end result, and let's go to Edge Mode, and we can use Swift Loop or we can use Ring and Connect. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and use Swift Loop just to make things a little bit easier and faster. So I'm going to harden this edge right at here, okay, across the front, and try to get that corner to come back there. And then I also need to harden this edge right here to get that nice, neat little crease there. Also out here on the ends of the wings. And here at the very end. Okay. Let's also go around this part right here just to harden up that inside edge. Oops. And that outside edge there. So looking good. Yeah, let's leave that one out. Let's go across the bottom. That looks good. And then also across the back here. Alright, so let's turn off Edge Mode and let's take a look at our model. A couple of things that I want you to notice. We've lost some of the shape on this round edge here. And we can see here that we've got these little creases in some of these areas, especially right in here. And that's going to be a little bit of a problem for us. It's not giving us the exact same shape that we had before. And I don't really care much for that. And so what I need to do is I need to spread out those vertices that were created with that edge loop. Now if you'll remember, we're going to use that constraint to do so. So let's select these edges right here. Let's hit F3 so we make sure that we get all the ones that we need. Okay, and then we're going to constrain to edge. And let's just drag that up in the Y. Okay, so we'll pull that up. Let's do the same thing right here. Pull that up. And it just kind of releases the tension on that geometry right there. Okay, so it allows it to smooth a little bit better. Let's do the same thing right here. Drag that down in the Y. Let's move this down. Okay, so the further the edges are, the smoother your result is going to be. Let's take this one, move that over in the X, and I'll move this over along with this. Okay, and some of these, I'm just going to move these over just a little bit more. Alright, that looks good. Let's look at some of the other edges. I think we're pretty good. This one is pretty tight here, so let's hit F3. Let's grab that, move that over, and also these right here. And let's move those in the Y there. Now, whenever you get to some of these edges, it might be a little tough for it to figure out which edge you want to constrain to. So sometimes you may have to grab the X and the Y and just lead it, and it will go ahead and follow and constrain properly. Alright, looking really good so far. Kind of want to just soften up that corner some. Didn't need it to be that hard there. Okay, so now let's hit F3 and then F4. Let's turn off vertex mode, and you'll see how smooth that is now. So that looks really good. Some nice edges for our wings. We can definitely see those harder edges there. One thing that I want to do is I want to kind of taper off the front. That just seems a little bit too flat for a wing right across the front there. So let's go to vertex mode. Let's grab these edges right across the front here. So I'm going to grab these vertices using my marquee selection. And let's also grab those right there. Let's make sure that we didn't get any in the background. So anything up here by accident will look good. And I'm just going to push those forward in the X. Now again, I have those constraints on, so we want to set that back to none and then push that forward in the X. And that's going to give us a nice, neat slope there. Now if needed, you could always grab these edges, or these vertices here, and you can go ahead and pull those back with those constraints turned on. Okay, just to kind of help with that, just to smooth that out a little bit more. Okay, so just kind of looking at the shape here, let's turn that constraint off. I'll lift that up just a little bit more. Alright, looking good. So now that we have our shape here, there's one thing that I don't necessarily like, and that's this shape right here. That's just a little bit too much, so let's pull that down. Let's get a nice little transition in our wing here. Let me go ahead and constrain that to the edge. Pull that up there. Just feel like that drops down a little bit too much there. Turn that off, and I'm going to push that in on the X and Y. Drop that down, and as well as this one. So just trying to ease up some of this topology here. Very, very rough shape there. So again, this shape just needs to be worked out a little bit more. So let's go ahead and bring that back up. Okay, so just trying to smooth that out. Sometimes it's just about a little bit of manual work, just trying to get the exact shape that you want out of your models. So this is all part of the process. Okay, so I think I can live with that shape. That's looking much smoother, very nice and neat here. Okay. Now another thing that you could do if you're having a little bit too much trouble in an area like this, if the topology just isn't working out, you can always relax that topology and it will kind of average out. So to show you this, with these vertices selected, I'm going to come down here and find relax, and you'll see it right here, and we're going to use our settings, and we're going to take the settings down to 0.5 and see how that creates that nice topology there. It does a really good job of trying to fix some things. Now this is a setting that you have to use sparingly. You don't want to go all the way up to 1, and you don't want to go all the way down to negative numbers and things like that. You want to gradually build that up. Okay, so it works on a case-by-case basis. Alright, so now that we have our wing finished, let's go ahead and unhide everything here. And let's go ahead and position our wing on our plane. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start working on the actual lift fans next. So we'll start on those.